Dude, I talk to hundreds or thousands of people and I get the same answer. They're like, well, I want passive income. What does that mean? What does passive income mean? You want $1? If you get $1, that we check that box. No, I want more. Well, how do you quantify more?
Welcome into the Dynamis podcast this week, guys. We have a personality that you probably have heard before because he definitely makes his way around the web. I'd like to welcome this week into the studio Steve Rozenberg, and he is not only an accomplished entrepreneur, a business coach, an airline pilot, real estate investor. I'm just going to stop now and get out of my own way and let him finish the introduction. But I first heard Steve on a Bigger Pockets episode years ago. It was episode 343. And it was one of those episodes that I stopped the episode and re-listened to it multiple times because everything he was talking about just made so much sense to me. It was the first time I thought in simple terms of checklists, just like when you get into an airplane cockpit, making sure that every time you get into a new venture, a new business, a new investment property, it's either a green light or a red light on that checklist. And if you're getting red lights, you need to figure out how to fix those. And so it's been an instrumental episode that I still reach back and look at to this day. And I'm really excited to be able to cross paths with him and welcome him into the studio. So Steve, welcome to the Dynamis podcast this week.
Tim, thanks for having me, brother. Looking forward to chatting, and hopefully we can smash that one and make this a better one for you.
Do you mind just giving the audience, for those who don't know about you, who are you? Give us an introduction, give us some background and the mission that you're on now.
Sure. So I first started off as a regular mortal, a normal person, with just wanting to have a job, probably like many people that are listening to this show. And that job was to be an airline pilot. That's all I ever wanted to do as a little kid. I wanted to fly airplanes. I studied, I worked my butt off. And at 25 years old, I got hired with a major airline, and I was the second youngest person ever hired by this airline. I had the job of my dreams. I had the best, most safe, secure job you could imagine. Pension, 401k, 25 years old, just married, hitting all the boxes. I was set. And I was set until a certain day in history. That was 9/11. And so I'd been working for the airline for 3 years. 9/11 hit, and the safe and secure job was very quickly eroded because 2 days after 9/11, I got delivered a furlough notice that said, hey, thanks for being this great employee, Steve, but that safe and secure job that you thought you had, it was never safe and it was never secure. And you're about to be on the street with 50,000 pilots. It's one thing to lose your job. It's another thing to lose your job in 48 hours. But on top of that, I had just moved from living in Guam in the South Pacific to moving to Texas. And all of my stuff was on a boat somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I didn't know what is going to happen. I was in the middle of buying a house. Talk about your life just getting ripped away from you. I didn't have the skill sets to do anything except fly a plane. So I started trying to figure out what's a solution. There's got to be a solution. In flying, we're always taught, look for the solution. So I started looking for the solution, and it looked like real estate was something that people did that were successful. So I started learning about real estate. I read books. I read a book a week. I went to that big building with books called a library because they didn't have YouTube or Facebook back then. Had to rent books, and I read as much as I could for a year. Every week I read a book. I learned how to flip, wholesale, all those things. And as everybody else, once I got into the real world, I got lied to, I got cheated, I got ripped off, you name it, and it happened to me. I had to keep learning because I didn't have a choice. I had to figure out, I knew it could work. I just was not having the right formula. I had started getting some success with real estate, owned some apartments, owned some houses, 40, 50 houses. So I say some success. I had quite a bit of success because I used my methodology of being an airline pilot to run my real estate. Because I started looking at being a pilot, and I started looking, one day I was sitting at the gate watching an airplane push back, and I saw all this stuff going on like most people see. And I know what's going on because I'm on the other side of the window in the cockpit, but to everyone else, it looks like chaos. Rampers are loading bags, fuelers are fueling, all these things are happening, but it's all done in this synchronous thing to get this plane pushed back, which is called a system. And I thought to myself, why can't I run my real estate that way? And then it started hitting me. Oh my God, like I'm trained from Boeing and a major airline. Millions of dollars have been invested in me to fly this airplane around in the sky. Why don't I just use what I learned and put that into real estate and in business? So I did. And my real estate started to run on its own without me. So then I started building businesses. So the first business I built was my own property management company to run my properties. And I was smart enough this time to go to a business coach and said, me and my business partner, we went to a business coach. We said, this is what we're doing. We have people wanting us to help them manage their properties. And like everything, we made a lot of mistakes. We lost a lot of money. And like everybody, it was not all rosy, which most people act like it is, but it's not. And so he says, well, come back in a couple days and I'll tell you if I can help you. So we're like, okay. So we come back a couple days later and he's like, well, the good news is you guys definitely have a business and it could be a multi-million-dollar business. We're like, yes. He goes, the bad news is you two are not the smartest guys on the planet and you'll be bankrupt in 6 months because you don't know anything about running a business. And we're like, oh, okay. So now this guy knew nothing about real estate. He was a business coach. So we hire this guy. We stayed with this guy for 7 years, every week getting coached by him on business. We scaled our management company, single family rental properties. We were the fastest growing company in the state of Texas. We had over 1,000 single family properties. We had 60% of our operations run by virtual assistants in Mexico. We had myself, I was speaking all over the United States and all over Australia and the UK because everybody wanted to know, how does an airline pilot build the systems in real estate to make the businesses run without them? Because that's the biggest challenge. Because if you can't make it run without you, you don't have a business, you own a job. And I was able to do this while still, I got my job flying back. So I was still flying. And everyone's like, how do you do this? So a venture capital firm from Silicon Valley approaches us. We're in the middle of setting up to franchise and license our company in the United States and in Australia. But this company came and they said, we've never seen a company like yours grow at the speed that you're growing and be so remotely operated with virtual assistants in Mexico and you guys being removed from the operation the day to day. So I said, well, this is the way airlines run. This is what I've been trained in. This is what we did. So long story short, we ended up selling our company to them. I became a vice president with them. And then we had 10,000 properties. And I was kind of the face of their company towards the investor community, towards the bigger pockets world and all the other stuff. And a lot of that's becoming, I became friends with Brandon and all the other guys that I'm sure mutual friends, great people. But I came at things differently because I never really wanted real estate. That was never my goal. It was really survival of being an airline pilot that took a left turn because I had no choice. And so it's kind of a bit of a different story. But when I came into real estate, I came with a lot of other training that was very tangible and relatable to the real estate world. So in 7 minutes, that's my story.
That's a really, really relatable, powerful story. And you touched on so many things, and let's just unpack them one by one, and we'll go through the list here. So you said you were never interested really in just real estate, but you started looking for answers and you found them in real estate, started reading all these books. My dad used to have this saying he told me all the time when I was a kid. And he said, son, necessity is the mother of all innovation. So when you have no other option, that is when we figure it out as humans and we get it done. And I've always had that in the back of my brain, that no matter how bad things look, no matter how bad or dire the situation is, I always have this like secret play in the back of my head. And that is that when there's no other option, we're down and out. You know what? Necessity is the mother of innovation. We're going to find another way. So I love that you said that. You mentioned 9/11. So you're very young. Obviously, how old did you say you were when you took the job with the major airline?
25.
So 25. So I don't know a ton about this career progression, but I do know that you need to log a ton of hours, which means you have to start very early. You have to work your way up, get your ratings. Usually you get on with a small carrier that you build hours and then bounce. So 25, that's really, really impressive. So obviously you're hungry, you're aggressive, and 9/11 happens. So I want to talk about two weird happenstances. I think 9/11 impacted everybody's life differently. It's the day that changed the trajectory of my own personal life. It's the day that I decided, screw everything else that I had planned. I'm joining the military. I don't care. Like, this is my obligation. But here's a weird little coincidence that I noticed, because you're on Bigger Pockets episode number 343. Okay. After the military, you know that one?
Go ahead.
You made the leap. So anyways, I used to be a firefighter. That's how I knew our friend Drake. Anyways, long story short is I thought, how ironic is it that 9/11 changed the trajectory of your whole career, right? And it happened to be that, you're on episode 343 of the Bigger Pockets episode talking about your your scalable business. You mentioned that you have to start with the end in mind when you started your investing journey, right? Okay. But it had occurred to you somewhere along the road that, hey, why don't I just take what I've learned at the airline industry and apply it to my real estate investing career? How long did that take for you to make that leap and have that realization?
Well, it's funny. When the realization was instant, right? So the mind, you can imagine something instantly. So the aha moment, as we'll call it, as I'm sitting at the gate watching this airplane go through what we in the airline industry, we call it the dance, and all this is happening. And one of the things that I think was important, and I just want to touch on that you mentioned, and I think a lot of people need to hear this, and I'm going to put it in this example. I fly a Boeing 777 aircraft, so it's all international long haul stuff. So if I said, hey, tomorrow we're going to Tokyo, Japan, before we ever get in the cockpit to manipulate the controls, we're in the weather room. We're checking the route. We're checking the destination. We're checking the fuel. We're checking en route situations. We're checking any operational situation. We're checking the airport operation here, checking the airport operation. There's a whole checklist of things that we have to go through before we ever get in the plane to go anywhere, to go to our destination, which is Tokyo, Japan. Now, if tomorrow I said, hey, Tim, for lunch, let's go to the airport. And we go to the airport and I'm like, hey, let's pick that plane. Let's jump in it. Let's get up in the air. And then let's kind of figure out where we want to go. Like, should we go to Hawaii? Should we go to Tokyo? Do you want to go to LA? New York? I don't know how much fuel we have. I have no idea the way to get there. I don't know what the weather's going to be. And I don't even know how to find the airport when we get close to it, because I don't even know where this airport is. Common sense says we probably would die or not make our destination. It would seem like you'd be like, that's stupid. Why would I get in a plane with you, Steve, if you have no idea what you're doing? My question to the people that are listening is, how many people start their real estate or their entrepreneurial career and they have no flight plan? They don't know the destination. They don't know how much fuel they have. They can't even quantify if they've made their destination, but they've got a good gut feeling. So I've learned, and again, when I put it in relatable terms of as an airplane, you're like, oh, wow. My point is, more of us need to figure out our final destination and how to quantify that than just getting going. Because if you get in a plane and you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you're doing, it's just going to take you to the crash site quicker. And so, go ahead.
No, I was thinking, I think what you're describing is probably the majority of real estate investors. They get inspired. They have this vision of the destination as passive income. I want financial freedom. But most people at that point, they just jump in the plane and they get off the ground. They're in the air. I say most people, that's a small fraction of people who are brave enough to start the journey, right? But of people that start the journey, we jump in our little Cessna, we're up in the air and we're buzzing around and we're like, okay, now what? And so for those people who feel like they don't know what the destination is, they have no idea, they couldn't see further than I'm trying to accomplish this financial freedom, how do you speak to those people? Because, that's how I started my journey. And it wasn't until
I was the same.
It wasn't until I got up in the air where I was like, oh shit, I'm going to run out of gas. Like I need to figure out where to go, So I feel like a lot of the investors that come to the Pints of Properties meetups, that message me on social media, they're in this boat. And so what happens if we've taken off, we're flying around and we didn't plan, we don't know how much fuel we have, we don't know where we're going? Because the biggest hurdle I see is clarity of where are we going? And is there a way to figure out and find a destination once we're in the air?
Yeah. So again, and sometimes we've got to slow down to speed up. And so, and listen, I was the same way when I first started. It was like, hurry up and go. I'll figure it out on the way. Well, it's like when I get people, if you were driving in your car, you're going to a destination. You know, not normally just driving to drive. And if you pull over and said, "Hey, Steve, I think I'm lost. Can I get directions? I need some help." What's the first thing I'm going to ask? Where are you going? And if you're like, "I don't know, man, I'm just driving," I'm going to go, "Well, then I can't help you." So how many people, as I know, and I coach and mentor a lot of real estate people, they don't know where they're going. So I'm like, okay, first of all, let's just slow this thing down. First of all, let's figure out where you're going. Because if we know where you're going and we can quantify that. Now, when I say this, it's very important. I talk to hundreds or thousands of people and I get the same answer. They're like, "Well, I want passive income." What does that mean? Right? What does passive income mean? You want $1? If you get $1, that we check that box. No, I want more. Well, how do you quantify more? You have to be very, very specific. For example, I use this as an example, and it's only an example. It said, okay, in 20 years, I want to have $20,000 in passive income with 20 properties. Okay, now that's a goal. Now we know that we have a date, which is 20 years. It's a day, it's a month, it's a year. It's not 10 to 20 years. It's not in the future. It's very specific. Like we're going to land the airplane in Honolulu at 8:03 a.m. Very specific. So then we say in 20 years from today, which is a date of XYZ, we are going to have 20 properties. Now it's quantifiable. And we're going to have $20,000 in passive income, which means you're going to own free and clear 20 houses, and each house is going to give you $1,000 a month in passive income. So if you come to me and say, "Hey, Steve, I've got this deal," and they put it, 3 inches from your face, like that makes a difference. And they're like, "What do you think about this deal?" And it's giving you $300 a month in passive income. I say, does that align with your goal? Your goal was $1,000 a month. Now we can look at appreciation and there's other variables, but if it doesn't align with the goal, we either have to change the strategy, meaning maybe change the market that you're investing in. We have to change the type of investments you're doing, or we change the goal. It's a mathematical equation. It's not by chance some fairy is going to sprinkle dust on it and it's going to magically spit out $1,000 out of its butt. It doesn't work that way. It only works off of mathematics. So the problem is if you can't clearly define what your goal is, and you can't very quickly, succinctly tell me what your goal is, you'll never reach it. Because if you don't know, I guarantee you, you're not going to be able to hire anyone, a virtual assistant or anyone, to carry out the vision because you don't even know your vision. And so that's the challenge people have is, again, it's not the fun, sexy stuff. It's building the foundation to the house that nobody likes because you can't see it. It's not putting the pool in. It's the, hey, I got to do framework. I got to lay concrete. I got to do this. No one likes that because it's below ground level. You don't see those things. But if you build a house and you don't have the foundation, what are the odds it's going to stand the test of time? It's not. It's going to collapse. And you're going to be one of those people that said, "Oh, real estate sucks." Real estate is just a tool. Real estate is 4 walls and a roof. That's all it is. It's the business model running inside of those 4 walls and a roof that will make or break your business as long as it's aligned with your goals.
Yeah, what you're saying right now is very interesting, and it's applicable to me personally because when I started this journey, I had this idea of passive income because I wanted multiple streams of income. I wanted this safety net. And for me, I thought real estate was the vehicle. I'm all in. I'm passionate. I'm going to conferences. I'm eating up all the books and podcasts. And as I got into it and built my network and my sphere of influence, I started to realize, okay, I do like real estate. There are some benefits of depreciation and tax purposes. Like real estate's cool. But it's actually not the coolest thing that I'm interested in. I want to build something. All of a sudden, this revelation came of, yeah, real estate's cool. Building property, a portfolio is really cool. But is that the best I can do? No, I want to create something. I want to build something. I want to go on this growth journey. Well, what is that journey? And it sounds like we just need to put that little Cessna back on the ground, walk back into the weather room, and plan an effective route over maybe the Atlantic Ocean because the stakes are much greater. We don't have leeway to put the plane back on the ground at a rinky-dink airport at that point. It's you're going in the ocean or you're going to execute and land at your final destination. So maybe, as crazy as it sounds, we all just need to plan a little bit bigger, scale up because the stakes are higher, and it forces you to make decisions that are going to get you to the final destination.
Well, and you're right. And one of the things I would also say is that if you hang around a bunch of hammers, all you're looking for is nails. You're not looking for anything to rake up or sweep or broom. You're a hammer. You're looking for a nail. If you identify as a real estate investor, you're a hammer. Everything has to be a nail. Now, there may be different variations. Maybe you're doing flip, wholesale, but they're all just different nails. I identify myself as an entrepreneur. I own businesses. My business just happened. One of my businesses just happens to be real estate. And then there's subset chapters of real estate. But when all you're looking for, if you identify as a hammer, the only thing that's effective for you is a nail. But there are hundreds of millions of dollars that fly over your head every single day in other derivatives of businesses, but you don't see them because you're a hammer and all you're looking for is nails. And so I always tell people, I'm like, do not identify yourself as a real estate investor. That, again, this is just my opinion. Identify yourself as an entrepreneur, because owning a real estate, if you own one property or if you own 50, you own a business. You've got income, you've got expenses, you have profit, you have loss. That is a business by definition. There's rules, laws, regulations. The problem is most real estate investors do not think of themselves mentally as a business owner, so they don't treat it like a business, so it doesn't run like a business, so it fails the way businesses fail. And why does it fail? Because the person who started the business was not a business owner. They were a real estate investor. And I think that's the mistake. Even if you talk to Brandon Turner, right? Or my buddy Brandon, he's a business owner. He owns a bunch of businesses. He's got all these thousands of doors. He's not going there swinging hammers and doing that. He has teams. That is a business. Anyone that's successful is successful. And I coach a lot of very successful real estate entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs. The biggest thing you can learn is it's not about you. It's about leveraging the team. And it's about building something based on your vision, based on your end goal, and based on your destination. And when I coach people, I tell them, like, let me just say one thing that I learned, and I didn't make this up, I was taught it. There's a term out there, and it's called be times do equals have. And I don't know who created it. My mentor taught it to me, and somebody probably taught it to him, right? We're all just recycling shit that we've learned. And so when we say, like, hey, how do I have this life? How do I have your life, Steve? What do I have to do? I'll do whatever it takes. They're missing the first part of that equation. The first part of that equation is who do I need to become to do successful things, to have a successful life? So if I said to you, hey, Tim, I'll give you an example. I won't say his name, but someone that I'm coaching right now, I asked him, I said, hey, he's starting a new business, a new venture, and it's a fix and flip business. And I coach a lot of people in fix and flip and wholesale and flipping because I show them how to systematize what they're doing to make it run without them. So I said, what are you going to do this year in revenue? He said, he goes, it was a tough year. He goes, this is our first year doing it. We'll probably make 500 grand. I said, okay. I said, would you say that you're working 12 hours a day? He's like, oh, more than that. I said, so you're probably working about as much as you can possibly work. He said, yeah. I said, so let me ask you this. Why can't we just add an extra zero to that 500,000? And he was looking at me. I said, 5 million. I said, let's do 5 million this year. And he was like, he was actually moving back in his seat. And I said, say it. I said, tell me. And he's like, tell you what, I go, tell me you're going to do 5 million. And he goes, but I can't do 5 million. I said, why? He said, I don't know what I have to do. He goes, I'd have to do all these things. I said, so here's the problem. You're looking at the wrong piece of the formula. See, you have to become a $5 million CEO first that looks at $5 million projects, that does 5 million, that acts, talks, walks, shits like a $5 million CEO to do $5 million CEO things, to have a $5 million business. I said, you will never build a $5 million CEO because you are a $500,000 CEO. You're doing things. You are becoming a $500,000 person. So you do $500,000 things. You're already working all day. Why not just add a zero to it? It's not like you're going to have to work harder. Like, people that are more successful actually work less because they use the leverage of team. I said, so the thing is you will never build a $5 million business because you have to become that person first. It's kind of like when you go to sleep, you have to act like you're asleep and then you go to sleep. You have to act like a $5 million CEO before you can build a $5 million business. So the reason why people don't go big, going back to what you're saying, is because mentally, they're not big people. They may do the work, but they're doing the work of employee mentality. They're not doing the work of what a leader needs to be. When I coach people, the biggest thing I have to do is get them out of their heads and say, it's not about you. Quit being selfish and quit thinking that it's about you and what you have to do. Become that person first. It's kind of like when they went to the moon. When the president said, we're going to the moon in 10 years, all the scientists said, how do we do it? We can't do it. And he was like, I don't give a shit. We're going. And guess what happened? They did it. Once you create the vision and you make that the thing, you can make anything happen. So, but if people just said, I'm just a real estate investor, I go, I agree. And that's all you'll ever be. Nothing wrong with that. But think about that. How much are you limiting yourself by saying I am a real estate investor as opposed to saying I'm an entrepreneur? I don't care what these derivatives are, because it's not like saying I'm a hammer. I think one of the challenges that people have is that a lot of times we're either running away from pain or we're running towards pleasure, right? And most of us are running away from a life that we don't want. We don't want a 9-to-5. We don't want to be told what to do. We don't want to be stressed about money. But unfortunately, your brain doesn't work that way. And what happens is most people run right back in to what they're running away from, because that's their filter and that's what they're focused on. So when I ask people, well, how's that working for you? They're like, it's not. I'm like, so change a variable, become a successful person to do successful things, to have a different outcome. And so what I've learned when people are doing this and they're running away from that life is they don't know what they're running to, meaning they don't have that goal. And so I think if we did this and we started being more intentional, because when people tell me, and again, I'm sure like you talk to a lot of people and ask them, why did you get involved? I want more freedom. Like, okay, so how do you quantify that? Like, how can you can't, there's no way to measure more freedom. So I think that we stop one set short of what we really want. When we have a generating business, right, of revenue, I don't care if it's real estate, I don't care if it's dog food, I don't care what it is. If it's generating revenue, what that's doing is that is giving you the ability to have more time, because you're not trading time for money like an employee. You now have time. With that time, the revenue from the business buys your memories. What we're doing, folks, is we're not buying freedom, we're buying memories. Unfortunately, many of us stop short of that memory, and they're busy being busy. They don't even have the freedom, and they don't create any memories because they lie to themselves saying they're so busy being busy. That's my rant.
Well, it's evident that you have not only invested a lot of energy into being a coach and a formidable coach, but also getting coached yourself. Like, it's just clearly
Absolutely.
evident in the journey. And everybody that I talk to that is highly successful, every single person in my sphere, in my networks, in my masterminds, all of them preach coaching. And I've actually interviewed a number of coaches. I bring them on. It's probably my most recorded guest is a coach. And the reason I'm always bringing these coaches on is because I'm looking for the coach. How do you identify, you mentioned when you started your property management business, which, by the way, is a business that nobody wants to get into. When you said you started property management, the only thing I could think of is, here's an insane person about to be on my podcast because he's doing something that everybody's like, don't do it. It's a nightmare. Offload that. It's not worth your time. And you're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to partner and grow. And next thing you know, you have 10,000 units. And so you cannot do that without being mentally prepared, and coaching is paramount. And you mentioned that you had a coach for 7 years. You met with him every week for 7 years until you departed from that coach. And so my question for you is, if you're on this journey and you know that you need a coach, how do you identify who is the coach for you? How do you identify the person that's going to take you to the next level? Because essentially, getting coached isn't rocket science. Everything you're saying to me is driving home. My bell is ringing right now, but also you're saying things to me that I already know. I just need to do them. So how do people identify who's the coach for them?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I don't want to say mistake, but the one thing you may be missing is assuming it's just one. So take a look at Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan was playing for the Bulls, he had 5 coaches. So again, when you don't have 5 coaches in junior high school, you have one, and he teaches everything. And as you get more specialized, when you go to the NFL, you have multiple coaches. You have a financial coach, you have a nutrition coach, you have a mindset coach, you have a free throw coach. So Michael Jordan, to me, was the best athlete in history, in my opinion. He had 5 coaches. Was he the best because he had 5 coaches, or did 5 coaches pull that out of him? So I think that we're on a journey. And I think that, number one, people come into and out of your lives for a reason. I don't think anything happens by chance. I don't think you and I met by chance. I think everything happens for a reason. Just my opinion.
I agree.
I also think that there are chapters in your life. Whoever you are today, whoever got everyone listening to who we are today, you are not going to be the person to get you to the next level. Because if you could have, you'd already be there. So sometimes it takes somebody like a rocket booster to get you to the next stage of the rocket launch. That rocket launch is only good for so many thousand feet, and then it disconnects, and then another booster. So the coaches I have today are different than the coaches I had when I first started. I ended up basically outgrowing my coach. He was great. I built a multi-million-dollar company and sold it for millions of dollars with his help. That was awesome. And then I got to the next level. Now I want to be with people like, Brad Lee and other people, Ed Milet, people that I've gotten to meet. And I'm like, who do you talk to? Who's your next level? That's where I want to go. I want to be with the guys that have private jets, do 8-figure businesses. I want to understand, how do they think differently? Because they don't work harder. They have the same 24 hours in the day. What do they do differently? So my point is, first of all, you've got to resonate with the person, right? I guarantee you, I am not for everybody. I am not here to be your friend. I am not here to say nice things. I'm here to make you successful. Sometimes that's telling you the shit that you don't want to hear, but I'm doing it because I care, because I think it's important for me to tell you these things. It's very important for me to be realistic and not, if I didn't do it, then I didn't care. And so I tell people, so that's not for everyone. Some people don't like to be accountable. I'm like, you know what? If you say you're going to do something, you do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I don't care what your problems are. You know what? You said you're going to do it. Be accountable. You show up. If you said Thursday at 9 a.m., you show up at 9 a.m. or 8:55, because that's respectable. So some people don't like that. Oh, he's too mean. He's too direct. Okay, well then I'm not your person. And that's totally fine. And this is what I tell people. If I want your success more than you want it, we're not a fit. If you said, Steve, I think there's two people in life. I think there's people who make money and success, and people who make excuses. That's it. And every morning we wake up, we have a choice in life. Every single morning we decide, are we going to be better than yesterday, or are we going to be worse? That's our decision. Every day you get a reset. And if you don't make a decision, you made a decision. I'm the kind of guy that says, hey, every day get up and be better. And I will be by your side, and I will be there holding you accountable. Because when I coach people, it's not just business. Because I believe you have to be a successful person in general to have a successful life. Money is just a derivative. We all know people that make a lot of money, and we would never trade our lives for them. So money is not a barometer of success. So going back to your question is, I think you have to be relatable. And listen, I've got a career. I fly airplanes. I've got a job. I do it. I walk the walk. I own real estate. I do these deals. So and listen, I coach commercial roofers. I coach HVAC people. I coach a lot of people from GoBundance. I coach a lot of people. Why? Because I think I'm relatable, but also I care, and I care about their success. But if somebody said, hey, Steve, I just want someone to be nice and hold my hand and this, and I'm like, I'm not your guy. Like, I just don't believe in that. And that's my personality. So I think going back to your question is you've got to make sure that whoever you're talking to has walked that walk. I think it's important that, like I said, if you're said, hey, Steve, I want you to coach me on running a triathlon, I'm going to be like, dude, I'm not your guy. Like, I know the Iron Cowboy. I'll get you in touch with him. He's a buddy of mine. He would be the guy to coach you. I'm not that guy. Iron Cowboy calls me and he's like, hey, Steve, could you help this or that on this situation? Absolutely. Because I'm that guy for a certain thing. So sometimes it's good to have a specific coach for a specific thing. And other times it's good to have multiples, but assuming that it's just one, I think could be a mistake in my opinion.
No, you're right. You're right. And everybody that I listen to, that I aspire to be like, that I'm reaching for, all of them have multiple coaches. You said a couple things that I agree with. You got to do the work. You got to sit your butt in the seat and you got to do the work, right? Everybody's mad at Lance Armstrong because he was doping. Well, yeah, he was doping, but he put his ass in the bike seat and he rode his way to 7 Tour de France's. And there is no substitution for the amount of work that went into him pedaling his ass to those 7 tours. So you got to do the freaking work. Same thing. You want to take steroids? Great. You got to get in the gym. Like, nothing's going to get you the results without doing the work. I want to talk really quickly because let's make this a little personal. Let's make this about me just for a second. So you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, you said the safe job is a lie. Okay. Well, here's a little quick background of my story. I joined the military, was part of a special operations unit. had a blast, got recruited by the federal government to go work on the, we'll just say for a small agency outside, and went to college, government sequestered, took a job as a firefighter. It was during this time that I started investing in real estate. I just was praying about it one day. I felt like God told me to build a financial ark, and that's how the investing journey started. Everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, dude, this job is so safe. What do you need? Why do you need anything other than, fire? You're going to have a pension. You're going to live a great life when you retire. But in my mind, I was like, well, what if I fall off a roof, venting a structure fire, or who knows? And so I started buying properties. Well, lo and behold, COVID happened, right? And during COVID, we had this crazy little thing called the vaccine mandate. And I drew a line in the sand. I said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not getting this vaccine. And my safe and secure, cushy little union job where I got pay increases every single year and pension and paid time off and holiday and vacation, boom, gone, stripped away from me. I made a choice. All of a sudden, my cushy little job was gone. So that safe and secure job that I was relying on as my safety net to just kind of be safe, be a little passive real estate investor, buy opportunistic deals, immediately removed. So I found myself floating in this ocean of, great, I became a multimillionaire from real estate. I was doing it slow, but now my monthly income is gone. I got 3 kids, I got a wife, and all of a sudden I was swimming like hell in the middle of the ocean. I was building shit. I didn't even know what I was building. I was just building anything I could think of that could generate revenue. And what happened during that journey is the exact same thing that you talked about. Is my identity started to shift from I'm a real estate investor to I'm an entrepreneur, meaning I'm here to capitalize on any opportunity that's going to get me to the end zone that I want to go to. But here's where I'm at now, okay? Because when I started on this journey, the beginning, the end destination that I had in my mind got stripped away. And what it did is it left me in this void space. And so all of a sudden in build mode as entrepreneur, I found myself super confused of like, oh crap, now what's next? What is the thing that I'm supposed to be building towards? And this year, frustrated with myself, I made a couple critical tactical mistakes. I definitely made some deals I should not have made because I felt like I wasn't going fast enough. I made some mistakes. I have no clarity on what is the end zone now. Before it was like, I'm just going to keep acquiring properties. That was my identity as a real estate investor. Now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm building these things. I know I'm not in spiritual alignment with what I'm building. I know I'm playing it too safe, but I also have I've lost my clarity of the next thing, And so to a guy like me, and I know so many guys, even in GoBundance, are in the same exact position as me. You start building this thing, everything evolves greater than you could have ever imagined it was going to evolve. And all of a sudden we're lost again. It's like we're starting over and we're like, treading water, not getting anywhere.
Yeah. And listen, you said a lot of things that were very relevant to myself, as I said. And when COVID hit, something real quick, guy reached out to me and he's like, hey, I have this airline pilot podcast show. He's like, I don't know who you are, but you were the most requested person that everybody wanted to have on. I was like, oh, okay. So I go on the show and, everybody wants to know. So he's like, tell me your story. So I tell him my story. So all these guys are getting furloughed in COVID. And he's like, what's the difference of you today, 2021, to you in 2001? I said, there's one word. I said, it's actually 2 words. Massive action. I said, I took massive action after 9/11. I didn't have all these fancy emojis and thumbs up. I said, I put my head down and I got shit done. And I didn't care if it was right or wrong. I did it anyways. I didn't know enough to self-doubt myself. I didn't have the option to say, well, should I or shouldn't I? When your should becomes a must and your back's against the wall. And I said, because I took that massive action and I failed, probably more than most people have ever succeeded. I probably lost more zeros than more people have made, but those losing of zeros has defined my success. I would have never built a multi-million-dollar business if I didn't have my failures. And so I tell them, like, so going to you, listen, the goals and the goal line is always going to shift. It's always going to change when things happen in your life. If it doesn't, then you're not looking and paying attention to it. So while you may be thinking, oh man, like I don't know it now, I would go, good, let's figure it out. Like, that's okay. It's good not to know. That unsureness is what keeps you, that pit of the stomach feeling when you're like, man, I'm not sure. That's when you have someone that says, hey, Steve, what do you think, man? And well, let's sit down and let's break it back down to the basics. Let's throw it on the table. Let's map it out. If you're married, let's get your spouse involved. If you have kids, what if money wasn't, we put so much value on money, but money is just a trading source. It's just something to get value back. It has no value except for the value that we give it. So if you said, Steve, like, I'm lost. Okay, well then let's get out a map and let's remap it. It's very simple. Let's put everything on the table. If money wasn't an issue, which it's really not, we make it an issue. But if we said, okay, let's map out our life to what it is now. What it was before, we didn't know, we didn't have the tools that we have now. We have different tools, we have different mindsets, we have different changes in lifestyle. What is it now? And exclude money. And that's the challenge people don't have. People don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Financial freedom. I tell all my friends this. So really quickly, I lost that job, right? The one thing that I did that I'm proud of myself this year in the last 2 years that I did instantly was just massive, insane action. I instantly just went into fight mode, took action. That's why this podcast exists. I started marketing on social media. I started my real estate meetup. Everything that I've done in the last 2 years came from massive action out of necessity because I was like, plans changed, time to start back over. And this podcast really started because when I left my friends behind in the fire department, they were grown men who were emotionally distraught because they were doing something that they didn't physically want to do, but they felt like they had no choice because this idolatry of money, they had to bend the knee because they needed this paycheck. And so I started this podcast as a way to inspire people to leave a breadcrumb trail for them to come along and pick up the pieces, because I fully believe it is our responsibility as Americans to achieve financial freedom so that we can work for philosophical freedom, meaning we have a safe, secure shelter with financial freedom to launch into our highest and greatest purpose. And that is standing up and fighting for what we believe in, free of the necessity to have to trade time for money. So that's how this whole thing started. And yeah, everything you're saying with me is just resonating.
Let me tell you one thing, and this is something that a mentor taught me, and he taught me how to speak on stages and sell my products of coaching and what I do. He taught me how to sell. And of course I paid him to show me how to do this. And I was speaking at an event in Seattle, a buddy of mine, Tarl Yarber, I think you know Tarl, and a guy that he trained both me and Tarl together. We had both been coached by him at different times. And we both spoke on Tarl's stage. And so he had a private jet. So I'm flying back with him in his private jet, right? And we were talking about selling and this and that. And he said, Steve, let me tell you something. He said, if you have a skill set and you can help somebody, he said, you have a moral and ethical obligation to do it. He goes, now, if you want to be remunerated and you want to be paid, he goes, you want to be paid $1 or you want to be paid $1 million? He goes, that's up to you. But he said, you have a moral and obligation to sell that product. And I said, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's just saying that because I'm selling. And he goes, let me put it another way. He goes, if you had a teenage child, and that child was hooked on drugs and was strung out and was going to die if somebody didn't get them off of drugs. He goes, and I knew how to get them off of drugs. Wouldn't you say, Marshall, you've got to help my kid. You have a moral obligation to help me. And I said, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I'm kind of busy. He goes, no, I have a moral obligation. He goes, so when you put it in a different perspective of your child hooked on drugs, now you're like, well, shit, of course you do. He goes, so don't think that when you have something that you could give that it's wrong or immoral when you're helping them. He goes, if you're selling a coaching product and, look, I charge $50,000 for me to coach people. I'm not cheap. I change their lives. I make them multimillionaires, but there's an investment. Okay. And is it worth it? Well, you can probably ask people that I've made multimillionaires that could tell you that. But the point is, he goes, you have an obligation. You're changing people's lives. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, you're not only changing their lives, you're changing the trajectory of their family's lives. He goes, what is that worth? I was like, I don't know, man. He goes, it's worth what you think it's worth. He goes, if you want to charge $10, charge 10. He goes, what do you value your time at? And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. So anyways, one of the things real quick, we mentioned the firefighters. The biggest thing that I had after the poor me pity party was over about me getting furloughed from the airlines, I was pissed at myself because I allowed myself to be lazy and let myself be controlled by a company. And then the company said, yeah, we don't need you anymore later. And I thought to myself, how stupid am I to believe that, I believe my own press clippings. I believe that I was amazing. I was an airline pilot. I was good. That was just the whole machine I'm gonna get into that, but it was basically, I believed that and I got lazy. And I paid the ultimate price by putting myself and my family in a very dangerous position financially because I got lazy and I believed that I was better than I really was. So that was a lesson to me. And I was like, I don't believe anything. We're only as good as the next breath we're going to take. And that's just my belief. And I've walked that walk. I've had those sleepless nights. And one of the things as entrepreneurs, whatever you want to entrepreneur, real estate, the one thing I tell people is, investing in yourself to have someone like me or somebody help you. Yes, it's going to help you financially, but what you don't realize is when you lay your head down on the pillow at nighttime and you're stressed and you're worried and you can't sleep, that's the thing that you want taken away. It's not the money. Mm-hmm. It's the mental stress and the time. The one thing we have in life that's a diminishing return is our time. Money, we will all make money. Money's replenishable. Time is not. And I don't know if you know the story, but I had a tragedy recently. I lost my son, who was 19 years old, in a motorcycle accident. And one of the things that I learned, and I'll, if it's okay, I'll share this with
Absolutely.
the audience. It was only a couple months ago, so it's very fresh. My son was 19 years old. He traveled to 19 countries, 2nd degree black belt. He dove scuba diving. He bungee jumped in New Zealand. The kid lived an amazing life. At my son's funeral, there was pictures, thousands of pictures of me. And if you see me on social media, you'll see all these pictures of my son traveling and doing everything. And as I look back and reflect now, I think to myself, at his service, there was no pictures about how much money I made in my bank account. There was no pictures about how many people I've coached, how many businesses I built, how many millionaires I made. The only thing that were pictures were me, my wife, and my family, and adventures and memories. And I thought to myself, sadly, he and I used to ride motorcycles together, street bikes, and he passed away on a motorcycle. So it's obviously, it hurts. But the one thing I remember is when we would ride together and we'd ride motorcycles and go down the highway side by side, I thought, fuck, how cool is this? Like, my kid's 19 years old, we're riding motorcycles together and it doesn't cost you anything. All of those memories that were up on the wall were free. And so as entrepreneurs, sometimes we get so busy being busy, we're not actually creating the memories for the family and loved ones that we're doing it for. And we tell ourselves a lie. And the lie is one day. I can tell you personally that when you get the knock on the door and you realize that those memories are never going to come again, I can only say the only reason that I was able to create these memories that were free, they didn't cost us anything, was because I built businesses that created the revenue to give me my time to go have those memories. And so what I would say to people watching this is, and again, he was our only child. He was our only child. And when you lose something like that, you really realize how important memories are. And unfortunately, most people don't realize how important they are until they're over. And so I would just say that to people watching, these memories, these things that you get, everything that everyone's doing here, do it with intention and do it for a reason. Don't just do it to do it. And if I can accelerate that, and my goal is to help people create memories in their lives, because I'm sure you and I know many entrepreneurs, probably people that we know together, that are so busy being busy, they're not creating any memories in their lives, but they could, because those memories are free. They don't cost anything except they cost your time and your attention. And I hope people get that out of this, is that everything that you and I are talking about is all to have a better life. But if you don't share that life with loved ones and you don't create those memories now, that day may never come and you'll regret it the rest of your life. And I hope no one does. And I hope no one experiences what my wife and I did, but it's a reality, and it's a sad reality, but it's something that I think that it's important to at least bring up.
I deeply appreciate you sharing that. And you're absolutely right? We're trading time for these memories. We're buying these memories back. And I hope that everybody listening heeds that advice and really takes a minute and pauses. If you're driving in your car, you're looking out the window, let that sink in. And today, when you go home and you greet your family, start implementing that into your life, your daily life, your time with your children, your wife. And I really, really encourage you to do so. And Steve, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming. This episode has just been incredible. I selfishly steered it for my own personal needs for a period of time, which I appreciate you allowing me.
To help.
Steve, how can people get in touch with you? How can we get a hold of you?
Yeah, very easily on any social media channel, Instagram, Facebook, my name, Rozenberg, Rozenberg, Steve. I've got a website, steverozenberg.com. I do events, I speak on stages, I hold big masterminds. Some of our mutual friends have attended them. I do all different coaching, but again, I'm not here to push my services, but if I'm right for you, you know I am, and reach out to me and I'm happy to have a conversation. But I'm all over the place. I'm very abundant. I love helping and giving people because I didn't really have that when I was first starting. And I used to always say, if I ever make it, I will do that. And I'm now in a place that I can give back, so I do.
Well, I appreciate that. And everybody listening, I'm going to put all of his information in the show notes. There'll be clickable links. So scroll down if you're listening. No matter what platform you're on, take a look at the clickable links in the show notes below. And I just ask everybody that's listening, if this episode impacted you, if it made a difference, if you had an epiphany that you didn't have before, if the light bulb came on, do me a favor. Give us a review, subscribe, like us, give us a 5-star review, share it with your friends, write us a review. And if you're in the local area, if you're in Tacoma, in Seattle, Olympia, if you're in the Pacific Northwest and you want to come get in proximity of people just like us doing big things, expanding our network and our mindset and our bank accounts, come check us out at Tacoma Pints and Properties. You can find the link below. It's the first Tuesday of the month, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for stopping by, Steve, and we will catch you all.
Bye-bye.